John Kennedy wanted to be a successful author, but he needed some help, and that help led him to a prestigious award and a cover-up. I'm Bob Summers, and this is A Presidential Story. Shortly after his 1953 Senate victory, John F. Kennedy confided in noted historian and Pulitzer Prize-winning author Margaret Coit that, quote, "I'd rather win a Pulitzer Prize than be President of the United States." Kennedy was a big fan of John Quincy Adams, especially Adams's work in the Senate. In 1954, Kennedy read about Adams's courage in the Senate in Herbert Agar's book The Price of Union and thought, this will make a great magazine article. He showed the book to his legislative aide, speechwriter, and friend Ted Sorensen and asked him to see if he could find more examples of senatorial courage. At the time, Sorensen was 26 years old and had been working with Kennedy for 2 years. When Sorensen was hired onto Kennedy's senatorial staff, they had discussed Sorensen writing articles and books under Kennedy's name. Both agreed that instead of sharing credit, they would share the profits from any published writings. Kennedy had always wanted to be an author, but he lacked the patience for the literary work of research, writing, and rewriting. When Sorensen looked into the story, he found a lot more examples. He presented a draft of the article to Kennedy, telling him there was a lot of information removed from the article, and that if he added it back, it would be enough for a book. Kennedy jumped on the idea. Kennedy had a connection at the publisher Harper & Brothers. One of the editors there, Michael Canfield, was married to the sister of his wife, Jackie. When Kennedy took it to Harper, the publishing house loved it. The book, Profiles in Courage, is short biographies of 8 U.S. senators selected by Kennedy from Sorensen's research, who showed bravery and integrity to do what was right in the face of known harm to their political standing and personal reputation. During 1954 and 1955, Kennedy was bedridden, recovering from 2 significant spinal surgeries, while also suffering from Addison's disease. During this convalescence, Sorensen, with help from Jackie's Georgetown history instructor Jules Davids, worked long hours on the book's structure, research, first draft, and most of its second draft. Kennedy would review the chapter drafts and add handwritten notes and dictabelt recordings with his thoughts. According to Sorensen, Kennedy, quote, worked particularly hard and long on the first and last chapters, setting the tone and philosophy of the book. Kennedy also, quote, publicly acknowledged in his introduction to the book my extensive role in its composition. Kennedy did write a brief preface, but the draft of the preface that Sorensen edited did not acknowledge him or his work. Only after Sorensen gently suggested that he should get a mention did Kennedy add the acknowledgement of his chief collaborator, thanking him for, quote, his invaluable assistance and preparation of the material upon which this book is based. According to their private agreement, and apparently in lieu of real credit, Kennedy paid him a bonus of $6,000, roughly 1/3 of Sorensen's annual salary. Now it was time to get this thing published. It was Christmas Eve, 1955, and Kennedy wanted to get this book published before the end of the year. Kennedy personally called Evan Thomas, the Harper & Brothers editor for Profiles in Courage. Kennedy told Thomas, I've got to get this book out this year. Thomas explained that they were too late in the process to get the book out any sooner. Kennedy wouldn't listen. We've got to get it out before the year turns, he replied. After more frustrating back and forth, Thomas finally asked Kennedy why it mattered so much to him. Kennedy said, I understand it would win the Pulitzer Prize this year. Profiles in Courage was published on January 2nd, 1956. Kennedy spent much more time and effort promoting the book than he did writing it. He signed endless autographs and made countless appearances. He would pester the publisher for sales updates and obsessed about the smallest slump in reorders. Kennedy would even send letters to his editor about book availability, like this one. Dear Evan, just a note to let you know that neither the shop at the LaGuardia Airport nor the shop at the National Airport had a copy of my book. But Kennedy needn't worry. Over the next 2 years, Profiles in Courage spent 88 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. It became a bestseller again in 1961 after Kennedy was elected president, and in 1963 after his assassination. The Pulitzers were awarded each spring through a two-step process. First, a set of screeners, usually specialists, create a list of recommendations for their particular category. Then, the esteemed advisory board chooses the winners, typically, but not always, from the screeners' list. In January 1957, Kennedy spoke to his father, Joseph Kennedy, about the Pulitzer. He followed up the conversation with a letter. Dear Dad, I'm enclosing a list of the members of the advisory board for the Pulitzer Prize. Coincidentally, soon after receiving the letter, Joseph Kennedy enlisted the help of his political advisor, family friend, three-time winner of the Pulitzer, and former Pulitzer Advisory Board member Arthur Kroc. It is unclear what actions Kroc took specifically. There is speculation that he strongly influenced advisory board members. Whatever action he took, it worked. Despite not having been elected by the nominating committee, on May 6, 1957, Senator John F. Kennedy was named the winner of the Pulitzer Prize for Biography. Those close to Kennedy said winning the Pulitzer made him happier than any other honor, including his World War II Purple Heart. Rumors of the profile's ghostwriting had started to circulate after the book was published, but never gained any traction. Now that Senator Kennedy had won a Pulitzer Prize, it was now a story. 9 days after Kennedy won the award, a veteran critic, Gilbert Seldes, wrote about the rumor in the Village Voice. Kennedy passionately denied the accusations in a letter to Seldes, but did not address it publicly. In the meantime, Joseph Kennedy's lawyers drew up a royalty deal paying Sorensen at least an additional $100,000, or in today's dollars, an astonishing $1 million. Things went quiet for 7 months until journalist Drew Pearson appeared as a guest on a December episode of the ABC show The Mike Wallace Interview.
He's the only man in history that I know who won a Pulitzer Prize on a book which was ghostwritten for him, which indicates the kind of public relations build-up he's had.
Who wrote the book for him?
I don't recall at the present moment.
You know for a fact,
yes,
Drew, that the book
I do know.
Profiles in Courage was written for Senator Kennedy by somebody else?
I do.
And he got a Pulitzer Prize for it, and he has never acknowledged the fact?
No, he has not. There's a little wisecrack around the Senate. Some of his colleagues say, Jack, I wish you had a little bit less profile and more courage.
Joseph Kennedy saw this broadcast and immediately called his lawyer, yelling, "Sue the bastards for $50 million. The next day, John Kennedy and Sorensen met and agreed that the story of a ghostwriter could destroy his presidential run before it even started. They devised a plan. First, they hired a high-priced lawyer, Clark Clifford, to pressure ABC into a retraction. Then they lined up a list of loyal witnesses and assembled select handwritten notes by Kennedy to prove Kennedy's authorship. And finally, Sorensen wrote an affidavit, sworn in front of a notary, in which he claimed his only role was to assist with research and other materials for the book. On that next Monday, Clifford and the senator's brother Robert showed up at ABC and told the executives that they would sue if the network did not issue a full retraction and apology. Wallace and Pearson insisted that the story was true and refused, but the network made the retraction and apology anyway. Kennedy continued to fight the ghostwriting rumors. When Kennedy ran for re-election in 1958, he taped copies of those handwritten notes in the window of his campaign headquarters for passersby to see. He won that election and the presidential election that followed in 1960. In 1961, Richard Nixon, the man Kennedy defeated for the presidency, visited Kennedy in the White House. During the visit, Kennedy encouraged Nixon to write a book, saying, "There's something about being an author which really builds the reputation of a political figure." In response, Nixon wrote his book, 6 Crises, in 1962, which, by the way, was also ghostwritten. Sorensen was a fabulous writer and continued writing for Kennedy when he became president, including this speech.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
And contributed to his inaugural address, probably including this line.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
In his 2008 autobiography, Sorensen finally admitted that he wrote much more of Profiles in Courage than he had previously admitted. As a lasting legacy for the book, and to honor John Kennedy, in 1989, the Kennedy family created the Profile in Courage Award to recognize those public officials that continue to display the political courage outlined in the book. John Kennedy was not the first president, nor will he be the last, to use a ghostwriter. But to accept an award on someone else's behalf? Well, it's just a shame that President Kennedy's profile in this case didn't show a little more courage. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please help out the channel, like and subscribe, and please visit POTUS.com to learn more interesting facts about the presidents.